Welcome everybody to our November Chocolatey Software Product Spotlight live stream. We run 2 live streams every month on the first and third Thursday. This live stream is for the Chocolatey Product Spotlight, where we spotlight Chocolatey products, recent releases, and important features in those releases as well. We have, as I mentioned, another live stream, and our other live stream on the third Thursday of each month is our Chocolatey Community Coffee Break, where we talked about the chocolate community, what's happening, how you can get involved and talk to key community members as well. Today, in our Product Spotlight live stream, we're going to be looking at our recent releases for Chocolatey for Business Licensed Extension, version 5, Chocolatey CLI version 1.2.0, and we'll also be looking at one of our most requested features for Chocolatey CLI, which is hook scripts. So my name is Paul Broadworth, and I'm the Technical Engineering Manager here at Chocolatey Software, and I lead the engineering team that is responsible for the products that we'll be talking about today. My co-host today, and the person who's going to take you through demos and talking about all of the things today and all the technical stuff, will be Gary Yoon-Park. Gary, do you want to introduce yourself?
I will try. My video's just stopped working. I will get my video back in a second.
The technical gods are not happy.
It's not off to a good start. But yeah, no, my name is Gary Yoon-Park. I am the senior engineering senior software engineer here at Chocolatey, and I'm going to hand back over to Paul, and I'm going to try and get my video working because it's not. So bear with me a sec.
Technical gods are not. Oh, we're just working. Nearly. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at Chocolatey for Business Licensed Extension, version 5, which we released not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago. And we also released Chocolatey CLI version 1.2.0. One of the most requested features, as we talked about as well, which Gary's going to demo as part of today's live stream, is hook scripts. Now, I don't want to ruin Gary's demo, but what hook scripts really do is allow you to extend the functionality of Chocolatey and what you can do with packages, sort of pre and post install, pre and post upgrade, and pre and post uninstall as well. So you can run PowerShell scripts as part of that. And one of the scripts today is going to solve one of the most long requested features for Chocolatey, and that's to do with desktop icons. So the hook scripts there is going to fix an issue that people have asked to be added into Chocolatey for some time. So we'll want to demonstrate not only that, but also the kind of things that you could put that to use with. So it's going to extend what you can do with Chocolatey. And I think your imagination is possibly going to run a bit wild, and there'll be all sorts of things that we can do. We've also created a Chocolatey hook scripts repository as well, which Gary's going to show hopefully today. And there'll only be one hook script package in there just now, and that's the one we're going to demo. But our aim is to encourage the community to generate more, and we'll see, as I said, where that imagination takes us. So the demo gods have smiled on you, Gary. You've sacrificed some pixels and some bits and bytes, and it all seems to be working now.
Fingers crossed. So I'm not using the camera that I was planning on using, but let's roll with it and see how we get on. So yeah, thanks for that introduction, Paul. I will jump back over here. So the intention is for me to go through the release notes for both Chocolatey License Extension and Chocolatey CLI, and then where I can, I will demo the various different aspects of that. So let's just jump in. Feel free to jump in with any questions or comments, Paul, as we're going through. But the first one there is we have released version 5, and that we've bumped the major version there to 5 because that is a breaking change. Now, the breaking change is to do with the way that the Chocolatey License Extension interacts with the Chocolatey CLI. We made some improvements in that area, which I'll come on to in the release notes, but in order for that to function the way that we want it to, we had to do a breaking change. So there's lots of minutiae detail that we could go into there, but effectively it's to improve the newer versions coming out past this version. So past this version, we won't need to do as many breaking changes, hopefully, when we make a change in Chocolatey CLI because of the way that we're now interacting between the Chocolatey license extension and Chocolatey CLI. So the hope is that it will reduce the amount of breaking changes going forward. But there was a breaking change in this release. So the other ones, there's a couple of bug fixes. The first one there was when creating a Chocolatey license package for Intune, the install command is missing the source location. So that was a small bug fix that I can't easily replicate because I don't have an Intune instance up and running in my environment. But if there's more details on that, you can click through to the license issue where it's got more details on that. And the second bug fix there is ensure that the argument replacement is case insensitive when using generic virus scanner. So we noticed an issue with the generic virus scanner where case insensitivity bit us, as sometimes happens in the computing world. So that has been fixed in that specific area. So again, I haven't got that set up to show you, but if you were running into that issue has now been resolved. In the improvement section, I'm not going to demo this one just yet because I'm going to show it when I step over to the Chocolatey CLI demonstration, but it's effectively the same thing. So we brought in support into the Chocolatey license extension for the --pin option when you're running the install and the upgrade commands. And I'm going to show a demo of that. But that's been a long asked for feature because normally what you'd have to do is Choco install something and then Choco pin that thing. So rather than having to do two operations, you can just do one now. And I'll show you that in action. This one kind of comes from the open source side of things as well. So we added an option to skip file logging for zip file extraction when using the get Chocolatey unzip and the install Chocolatey zip package commandlets. What that effectively means in breaking that down, some zip packages are huge in the sense that there's lots and lots and lots and lots of files contained within them. And what Chocolatey does by default is it will log out every single one of those files to both the console and to the log file. And in those scenarios, it slows the whole process down. The installation of that package can take a long time. So a package maintainer now has the option of passing in a parameter to that commandlet or those commandlets to say, you know what, I don't need you to log the extraction of that zip file, and it just makes that installation of that package smoother and quicker. So there's something a package maintainer can take on board now when they're creating that package. We added a new configuration for specifying how often Chocolatey agent should clean up rollover log files. So that harks back to the previous version. So in the previous version in the last release of Chocolatey agent and the last release of Chocolatey license extension, we added in an opportunity to say when the Chocolatey agent is running on a periodic basis, how about we check the log files to see if there are log files that are essentially out of date and we don't need them anymore. Now, in the last release, that was a hard-coded value and you couldn't change it. So now in this release, that's now a configuration option within Chocolatey license extension. So you can go into the Chocolatey config file, or you could use the choco config command to specify that value now. And then the new option is, let me just find it. I had it at hand just a second ago. So the new option is, I won't be able to find it now because I'm looking for it. Use log retention policy and the log retention policy in days. So you can enable it or disable it. And then once enabled, you can specify the amount of days that you want the logs to roll over at. So any log file that's greater than the default, which is 30, would then be truncated and removed from the system. But you can then switch it on and switch it off again, or you can control exactly how many days you want. So that's now a configuration option, two configuration options that you can set in the Chocolatey license extension. And the final one there is a new option to the install, upgrade, and uninstall commands, which is to force the execution through the self-service background agent. So normally, the decision about a command being executed through the self-service background agent is done through configuration. So within configuration, you'll say that the install command, the upgrade command, and the uninstall command all go through the background agent. But you can now force the execution of a particular command if it's not configured to go through the background agent at the command line. And you can force it to go through the background agent if you wanted to. So that's the new self-service option, use self-service option. And again, there's more details in the linked issue if you wanted to find out more about that. So that was a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, but that's all the breaking changes, bug fixes, and improvements. I haven't done any demos there because most of the demos are kind of related to the open source side of the fence. But the ones I mentioned there is we have made them available in the Chocolatey license extension as well.
Did you say that you were going to demo the pin option and the install and upgrade commands, Gary?
I am, yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
I am. That's one of my first demos. In fact, I'm going to open up my demo script so that I can say that I've got it available. Right. So stepping over to the release notes for Chocolatey CLI 1.2.0. The first one there is the feature. Now, I'm going to not do that one right now. I'm going to hold that one until the end because that's the one that probably going to we're going to get into discussion about. So I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to go through the rest of the release notes and then show the demonstration of the hook scripts in action. So the first one that I want to talk about here is a bug fix for upgrade all reuses overridden package parameters when use remembered arguments for upgrades feature is turned on. So what does that actually mean? Right. So for the longest time, we've had in Chocolatey a feature that is disabled by default, which you can turn on. And the idea there is that anytime you do an installation of a package and you use a package parameter, you might specify that you want this thing to happen or this thing to happen. The intention was always the case that we Chocolatey CLI, would store those arguments. And when you come around to do an upgrade of that package, it will then reuse those arguments. So you wouldn't have to, in the upgrade command, remember what you used when you did the install. Because simply put, that's annoying. I mean, if you figured out what you wanted to do during the install, and you don't want to have to remember all of those settings when you do the upgrade of the package. So there's lots and lots of history in this specific issue, and we've thought we fixed it a few times in the past. If you look it through, if you went and clicked in 1443, you would see multiple PRs associated with it, because each time we thought we'd fixed it. This time we definitely think we have fixed it. So I'm hoping that this is the end of it. But I'll try and show you that in action. So over here, I'm going to go into my PowerShell script. And over here, I'm going to run a couple of commands to enable some features and make sure that I'm in a position where things are set up. So there, I'm running the Choco feature enable, which is the user remembered arguments. And then I'm also going to enable the feature, which is allow global confirmation. So I'm just basically putting my machine in a state where it will remember the arguments, and then they should remember them when I do an upgrade. So the next couple of commands here is I'm going to install a couple of packages, and I'm going to install a couple of older packages, older package versions. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Choco upgrade all, and hopefully we'll see the remembered arguments correctly being attributed to the right packages. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to paste them in here again. So the first one is I'm installing curl, and I'm installing it with some package parameters, a version, installer arguments, etc., as well as the force x86 command. And then further down here is I'm going to do the Choco install of wget. Here, all I'm doing is a version. Okay. Now, if I had run those commands and then before this version of Chocolatey CLI, if I had then run this command, so let me grab this command from my screenshot from my notepad. If I previously had run this command, what it would have done is it would have reached into the remembered arguments for curl, and it would have installed curl using those arguments. But then what it would have done on the next execution, when I did the upgrade of wget package, it would have sent those same arguments from the curl package into the wget package, and things would get thoroughly confused, right? So what should happen now, I put on the dash debug flag, so there's going to be a lot more output than what you would typically see. But what I'm hoping to be able to show you is during the actual installation of the package, what we'll find is I'm going to have to go looking for them, but what we'll find is that the installation arguments and the package parameters were correctly sent into the curl package, but they weren't then also sent into the wget package. So you'll see here that there was no package parameters passed in for wget. There was no installer arguments passed in for wget. But if I scroll back up to where we did the installation of the curl package, there's a few dependencies in there. That's why we're seeing more output. But if I go up here, and I won't be able to find it. Let me find it here. So package parameters, it's then remembered that there was the curl only parameter. It's remembered that it was the force-x86 command parameter that was passed in. It's remembered that it was the curl IA parameter passed into the installer argument. So the hope is that with this bug fix in play, going forward, any remembered arguments will be correctly hydrated back from where they're persisted by Chocolatey, and then during something like a Choco upgrade all, where you're installing multiple packages, upgrading multiple packages at the same time, it will correctly find the installation arguments, the package parameters, etc., for that specific package, and it won't pollute the other packages with the installer arguments of the other package. Okay, now that feature that I enabled, so if I go back to here, that feature that I enabled, which was this one, that's still disabled by default. So we haven't changed the default value of that feature in this release, but assuming that everything goes well and we don't have any further reports of problems with remembered arguments, a future version of Chocolatey is almost entirely possible and most likely that that feature will be enabled by default. So you would have to opt out of using that going forward as opposed to opt in. Okay,
Gary,
that's that. Do you have any questions on that?
No, I was going to ask if you could make your command window a bit bigger, just kind of drag it down a little bit, just so that it's was more of the screen. That's what I was meaning. So we get similar text. Yeah, that was all. So cool. Looking at that user remembered arguments for upgrade. We've talked about this quite a lot about when we would turn this on, and obviously that's going to be in a major release rather than a minor release. So we would be looking at version 2 or 3 or something further on. But I think it's something that if we have fixed, we should look to turn on sooner rather than later. That's certainly the thoughts at the moment. But as always, we have internal discussions about these things, and we take community feedback and what the community are looking for, what our users, what our customers are looking for, and we will decide from given all of that what we're going to do from there. And I would also just wanted to point out, just before we go back to the notes, Gary, Kim has pointed out in the chat that the licensed extension release notes that you were looking at, you were talking about the log retention, and while you it was made clear that it replies to Chocolatey Agent, Kim has said that Chocolatey Agent 1.1.0 or later must be running for that to apply. So it was just to kind of call that out specifically.
Gotcha. Yes. Yeah. No, it makes sense. Thanks for that. So the next one that I wanted to chat about, back to the release notes, is wrong item set for overriding credentials when using remembered arguments during upgrade. So this is kind of an associated problem, but what we found, and when I say we, it was one of our community contributors, the Cake is a Lie, that found this one. But on hydrating information from the remembered arguments file, there was a reasonably old copy-paste error where it was assigning the hydrated value incorrectly. So basically, previously, it would set the username, it would set the password, and it would set the username every time for the password certificate and the certificate password for a source command. So if it had stored information about a specific source that was used during the rehydration of that, the password and the certificate would never be set correctly. So we fixed that, and by we again I mean the Cake is a Lie, put in a PR for that. So thank you very much for that. And it's semi-related to this next one. So Python alternative source doesn't create arguments correctly due to a spelling mistake.
Gary,
so what we found.
Can I jump in there just before you jump on? I was going to ask, can you clarify what you mean by hydrating? Because a lot of people, I think, maybe we talk about it internally. I understand what you mean, but can you explain to people perhaps that don't understand what you mean by hydrating.
There's a couple of terms that kind of interchangeable there. So there's hydrate or deserialize. So essentially what we've done is when you run the Choco install command, we take all of those installation parameters, those package parameters, and we serialize it to disk. We serialize it into a file on disk. So when we need to, we bring those settings back into the currently executing choco.exe. So you can either deserialize that information into the running process, or you can hydrate it back. So they're kind of interchangeable terms in terms of basically getting the information from the persisted file and bring it into a place where it's then usable. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. So this next one was an interesting one. And by interesting, I mean not very interesting at all. It was quite annoying. So we had a PR from a community member who ran a tool that went across our entire GitHub repository for Chocolatey CLI, and there was I want to say there was a reasonably high number of spelling mistakes, and we fixed all of those. But one of the spelling mistakes that was identified showed that there was an error with the Python alternative source. So I click through into this GitHub issue, and then, so basically what was identified within this tool that was executed is that there was an if statement within our code base that basically said, if the config.command name is equal to install rather than install, take the appropriate action. And that meant that in certain circumstances, the Python alternative source never did what it was intended to do. So by virtue of fixing the spelling mistakes, we identified that and we have corrected it. So if you were running into that with the Python alternative source, then that has been correctly figured out as well. Okay. The next bug fix, this one, if I remember correctly, this one came from Corey on the team. Let me just verify that that's true. Yes. So directory permissions were not set when installed from PowerShell 7.2.5. So a couple of things around this. Chocolatey, when it's running the PowerShell scripts contained within a Chocolatey package, will use Windows PowerShell. But if you, as a consumer of Chocolatey and a user of Chocolatey, are installing Chocolatey in PowerShell core, then we want that to work and we expect that to work. But what Corey found was that there was a certain scenario where it wasn't setting the directory permissions correctly when running on PowerShell 7.2.5. And what that came down to is that there is I'm going to say deprecated, but I can't remember. There's a commandlet that doesn't work anymore in PowerShell core, but it does still work in Windows PowerShell. So what we've done is we've changed that up to use a commandlet that will work in both Windows PowerShell and PowerShell core. So if you're running into that installation issue with Chocolatey and PowerShell core, that will also now be fixed as well. I've already got Chocolatey installed, so I'm not going to demo that. I'm just happy to talk through that. Any questions on any of that, Paul, before we jump on to improvements?
No, the only thing I wanted to kind of highlight is that the Python alternative source that's been broken for a little while now, as a simple spell mistake. And what that's kind of thrown up to us is the Python alternative source being used very much within Chocolatey. So that's something we're going to look at kind of in the future, not just the Python alternative source, we have other alternative sources, and we're going to have, again, discussions internally about those alternative sources as well. So, well, this is a spelling mistake, and it wasn't working, and we fixed it now. It did kind of pose other questions, which we may have answers in future versions of Chocolatey as well.
Yep, no, that's a good point. So with regard to improvements, this one is marked here as a security issue because there was a potential for a potentially malicious file to be included within a Chocolatey package, and for our automated systems to not pick up on it. And what it came down to is that, and it's spelled out here, so unable to extract files from a nupkeg when different file encodings are used within the file name. So what that meant was that if a file included certain characters, or it was written in a certain way, when we, Chocolatey, extract that nupkeg, that nupkeg will be extracted onto disk. Well, no, that's a lie. It wouldn't have been extracted onto disk, but it would have still been contained within the nupkeg, and we wouldn't have known about it. So a malicious actor would have potentially been able to utilize the fact that it was contained in there, but it didn't go through any of the virus scanning, etc., that we do. So in this release of Chocolatey, we've included an update to the NuGet client library that we use that addresses this issue, and we're now making use of that new NuGet.core library across all of our package moderation services, and it's shipping within this version of Chocolatey. Now, what I will say is it's lots of things would have had to be compiled on top of each other in order for this to be an attack vector. So it's not a huge security risk, but we are marking as a security risk for the potential of that to have caused problems for certain people. So that's all I've got to say on that one, unless Paul had anything to add to there.
No, I agree that, again, there's lots and lots of things that have to happen in order for that to be exploited. So the actual risk of exploitation was very, very, very low. I know, that was the other thing. In order to exploit it, you would already have had to have exploited the box anyway. So then having to go in and exploit it through Chocolatey was because you already had control of the box at that point. So it didn't make any sense.
Exactly. Okay, so the next one on the list is we added a commandlet for acquiring paths set in environment variables that should not be used directly. So what does that mean? So we added a new package validator rule. So I can actually bring that up, I think. So if I go over here and look at CCR and then go into moderation and go into the package moderation validator service and then look at the rules, and then I scroll down to the second to last one, which is 72. We added a validator rule, which basically said, if you're using a collection or one of a collection of environment variables within your automation script, so your Chocolatey install, Chocolatey uninstall, Chocolatey before modify, we're going to push back, or the validator is going to push back and say, don't use that. So there's ones in there. There's good reasons for doing this. I'm not going to go through all of them at the minute. But what it did highlight was that there was, in preventing people from using certain of these, like the Chocolatey package folder, the package folder, what we found was we were not making it easy for people to actually get the information that they need, and that's why they were using the environment variable in the first place. So what we did is we created a new PowerShell commandlet that could be used to get the information that you would have got for the environment variables in the first place. So the recommendations here, if you pushed a package to CCR and you are tripping over rule 72, the guidance here on the page would then to be used to use the get Chocolatey path commandlet. Now, that would mean that your package would need to take a dependency on a specific version of Chocolatey, because you need that version to be installed in order to use the commandlet. So be careful when you're doing that. But essentially, direct usage of the environment variables is quote unquote frowned upon, because those things might change. We, in the underhood of Chocolatey, might make some changes to that. So we don't want people to take dependencies directly on what is the public-facing API of Chocolatey. Okay, so there's a new commandlet, and it's documented. So if you click on the Get Chocolatey path there, you'll find that information about that commandlet and what it does and how you can make use of it. Okay. So with that,
just a quick comment. I've added or I'll roll back actually. We wrote a blog post about the changes to package validator, and we published that on our blog, obviously. But I've added the link to that into the chat. But yeah, Gary, you could bring that up as well if you don't mind. It was actually August the 26th, so it's a couple down there. It's there.
Yeah, so with more information in the blog post about the changes that we're making, why that we're making it, etc. So there's information there, and like I say, there is a new commandlet that will now help with that as well. Okay. So the next one is we're going to step into the demos start the demos that I promised. So the first improvement is we added support for the pin option on the install and the upgrade commands. So what do I mean by that? So let's look at this just now. So if I currently look at my list of pins on my system, I have exactly 0. So I have no packages pinned. But if I were to do something like choco install winderstat, it's one of my favorite packages to use as a demo because it's a nice quick installation. So let's just install winderstat on my system. And if I run choco pin list, nothing's changed. Still nothing's pinned. So if I wanted to pin that package because I knew that that was the version that I wanted to stay on for a period of time for reasons, so there's good reasons why I want to stay on a specific version, I would have had to have done choco pin add -- name equals winderstat. I can't type winderstat. Having done that, if I then run choco pin list, then at that point it will tell me that I have got a pinned version. So all of that's great, but in order to get to that state, I had to run 2 separate Chocolatey commands. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to undo what I just did. So I'm going to do a remove of -- name winderstat. Nope. There, right? And then I'm going to do a choco uninstall winderstat. So I'm back to the beginning. I don't have that winderstat package installed anymore. What I can do now, I'll let that finish. So again, just to prove it out, choco pin, I keep doing pin, choco pin list, I'm back to having nothing pinned. But if I do choco install winderstat -- pin at the end, so there's a new option being added into the command. It'll do the install as per normal, but what it'll also do is it'll also pin that package. So I can do the things that we're doing in 2 operations now in 1. So if I do choco list again, not list, sorry, choco pin list, now I have a pin package of that winderstat package at that version, and I was able to do that in 1 operation. So it's a micro optimization, but it was a requested feature, and I'm happy to say that we've now got that within this release of Chocolatey.
I actually used that just the other day. I've got an old license for Camtasia that's only valid for the 2020 versions. So There's no point me installing that, then having to upgrade because it's going to upgrade to the latest. So yeah, I did it all in 1 command, and that was the first time I'd used that. So it was nice to actually be able to do that in 1 go.
Perfect. So the next one there, packages.config should include all options, including ignore checksums. So what's this one talking about? So for the longest time, we have been able to create a packages.config file that contains a list of packages that we want to install. And the way that we would install that is we would do choco install packages.config. So the path to that packages.config file. So what that meant is that you could create an artifact that is, these are all the packages that you want to install on this machine. And in 1 command, it would just run through all of those. Now, what you were able to do within there is you were able to do a limited subset of options or settings for those packages. So for example, within that packages.config file, you could include a specific version of a package that you want to install. But you couldn't do other things like force x86 or include checksum or force checksums or specify a specific checksum for a package. All the things you could do at the command line, you weren't able to do within the packages.config file itself. So as an example, if I go back down to here and I look at the issue linked to this, what we'll see in the pull request associated with it, which I think, again, this comes from the Cake is a Lie. He's been working on this area. Is it this one I wanted to show? No, it wasn't that one. So if I go back to this one, there's an example of a more complete packages.config file. So within the packages.config file, you can now specify lots of things. So what is the download checksum? What is the download checksum type? Should it fail on first error? You want to control the limit output? All of these things you can now set on a per package basis within the packages.config file. So as an example, if I were to go over here to my temp folder, here's one that I prepared earlier. So if I open up this one in Notepad++, what I've got is I've got a list of packages that I want to install. I want to install the Azure CLI, I want to install .NET SDK, and I want to install Terraform. Now, I've also added in this attribute, which is pre-release true. Now, if I wanted to install a pre-release version, I could have done that previously because I could have come in here and I could have said version equals blah, right? And that would have installed a specific version, including a pre-release version. But because I don't always know what the latest pre-release version of a package is, what I can do now is I can just set pre-release true. And now, if I go down here and I do not that, let's do C temp packages.config file. What I can do now is it will run through and it'll install all those things. So it'll install Azure CLI at the latest version, which is 2.4.2.0. But what it'll do on the next one, the next package, is it will try and find the latest pre-release version. So rather than the latest official version, I want the latest pre-release version of that package to be installed. So what we'll see in the output is there. It went and found the latest pre-release version that's available, not the latest. So the latest one there is RC22, this one here. So it's RC2247. That's the latest pre-release version that's available of the .NET SDK package. So it hasn't installed the latest stable version, which would be 6.4 or something. It's went for the latest beta version available, or RC version that's available. So what we found here is, or what we've done here is we've opened up the potential for essentially anything that you can do at the command line, you can now do as attributes within the packages.config file. So it gives you much more control over how you install packages from that artifact of the packages.config file. Now, in a future version of Chocolatey, I believe there is already open PR for this, so it will come soon at some point. What we'll do, though, is we will extend the Choco export command. So currently, the Choco export command will give you a list of all the packages that you have installed on your machine, and you can optionally say what version of that package is installed and put that into the packages.config file. But in a future version of Chocolatey, we will extend that Choco export command to include all of the persisted arguments that were passed in when you first installed that package. So any package parameters, any installation arguments, other installation options, all of those will be exported and made available in a pre-generated packages.config file. So when you then do a Choco install packages.config file, you've then got essentially a like for like from this machine over to this machine with all of the installation arguments made available to the install command. Whew, that was a lot of words. Any questions on that?
Gary, Stevie's just added a comment in the chat, and he said, just be aware that things like log file aren't supported here yet, as a log file loads before the install of the packages.config, so it would be ignored if you define it as a logging is already set up. Is that the case? I hadn't heard this before, so that could be the case. Are you aware of that?
I would need to go away and think about it some more.
Okay.
Log file loads before the install would be ignored if you define it as a logging. Yeah, short answer is I need to play with that. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Steve,
I can.
Yeah, thanks. Stevie's kind of confirmed that should be the case. So yeah, we would need to look into that. So just in case anybody watching it on YouTube later on is wondering what we're talking about, Stevie says he's confirmed it. So if you add in the log file parameter into the packages.config, because the log file loads before the install of your packages.config, it's already set up. So that actual option, if you define it, doesn't change anything with that run of Chocolatey.
Yeah, what I was the thing I would want to go and confirm is whether that is an option that we've added to the schema for the packages.config file. So although it is mentioned there, all of these appear to be either applicable as or earlier required in the packages file. So the short answer is I don't know if the log file option is something that's included in the packages.config file. So that's the part I would need to go away and figure out. And if it, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah. No, that's good. Okay, thanks.
So the next one I've kind of already spoken about, but this is just the open source work that was done in order to support a new option on the get Chocolatey unzip and the install Chocolatey zip package commandlets, which basically said either don't do file logging for the extraction or do file logging for the extraction. The default is still to log everything, so it is something that a package maintainer would need to opt into. The next one here that I want to talk about is list parameters and templates. So what is this referring to? So let's go over here and let's do Choco template list. So what's a template? A template is a way for a package maintainer to use the Choco new command, but allow them to create a new package template using a pre-configured template rather than the built-in one. So currently, the only template that I have installed is the built-in one. So when I run Choco new, I get lots of files created for me with lots of helpful information about how you should create a package, what you need to do, etc. Now, what you can do, though, is you can install additional templates. So, for example, if I go and install this one, so I do my copy paste didn't work. So let's just type it out. Choco install msi.template. So that didn't work because I spelled template wrong. I saw it as soon as I hit the enter key. So I'm going to install the MSI template so I can show you where that gets created. So it creates a templates folder and it creates an MSI template folder. And then the files contained within here are the ones that will be used when I run Choco new. So for example, if I run Choco new -H, just so we can see what the options are. So Choco new, I can then say what template do I want to use. So one of the options that you can pass in is the template name. So what template name do you want to use? So I could pass in --template equals MSI, and then the creation of that new package would use that new MSI template that I've got in play there. But what this feature is talking about is if I do Choco template list again, it will list out that I now have that MSI template available, which is great. But one of the things that I can also now get if I pass in the verbose option to the list command is it will go in and it will figure out, okay, what is the list of files that's available within that template? But further to that, it will list out all of the package parameters that you can pass in when you're generating the new package. So the way that a template tends to work is if I go and look at one of these, if I go into, so the way it did that, by the way, is it's created this new .parameters file for that template. And it did that the first time I ran the verbose command, and it'll then use that file the next time. But what we can look at within, say, the Choco install.ps1 is that there are these templicized or templated. Is that big enough? Can you see that, Paul? Or should I zoom in a bit? Zoom in.
Let's zoom in a little bit if you can, Gary. That's
so
awesome.
within a package or within a package, a template file, or more specifically, a template file, you can use these double square brackets to indicate that that's a parameter that can be passed in when you do the Choco new command. So what we've done now with the Choco template list is it's extracted all of those templated variables so that you can know without digging into each file which parameters you want to pass in. So now when you do a Choco new Bob --template MSI, you can then pass in package name lower lower equals Bob, right? And then you could pass in package name. That's obviously spelled wrong, but you get the idea. So anything that you pass in at the command line when you run that Choco new, you can easily see what parameters you can pass in when you run the Choco new command. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's a feature that was, carry on.
I was going to say there's a question in chat from Stevie. Can I verbose list a specific template, or is it an all or nothing approach?
I'm fairly sure that you can do name MSI. Yeah. So that's listing out just, so if I had more than one, so if I do a Choco install zip dot.
You're typing the food today is just failing you.
It really is. So if I do the install the zip template, and now if I do Choco template, seriously, list, I'll see that I've got two of those packages available, two template packages available. If I do --verbose then I will see the parameters for both of those packages. So there's the zip one and there's the MSI one. But if I go back to that command where I'm just listing the verbose of the MSI one, then I only see the output for the MSI one. So yes, the answer is yes. Okay. Where's this one? Got 15 minutes left. I think we're doing well. Chocolatey tab expansion.ps1 can cause slow autocomplete in PowerShell. This was a weird one. But effectively, what this came down to is that within the Chocolatey tab expansion.ps1 file, which is in control of, I won't be able to show it because I don't have it installed, I think. But if I were to do choco in, and then if I were to hit tab, then we get tab completion to say this is the install command. It's not showing up for me because when I did an install, I didn't also add the necessary entry to my PowerShell profile to make it appear. There's some docs on the website that show you how to do that. But the Chocolatey tab expansion.ps1 file that we were using was making use of non-expanded PowerShell aliases. And the end result of that is, so for example, we were using where rather than where-object. So in certain scenarios, under certain PowerShell setups, that where alias didn't exist. And as a result, the running of the Chocolatey tab expansion basically just took ages because it was trying to find that commandlet or that alias, and it was just getting stuck in a loop. So what we did is we ran through the Chocolatey tab expansion.ps1 and we expanded all of the PowerShell aliases, and it no longer happens. Okay, so that's what that one was. Deprecate side-by-side installs. This is an interesting topic.
I'll leave that one with you then, Gary. That's fine.
I will explain what's happening just now. So let me grab this command that I've got here first. I'll show you what we've done, and I'll show you for why we've done it. Okay, so over here, if I run the command, if I run choco install 7zip.portable and I say -- side by side with that version 22, what that will do is it will attempt to install that package, but it will install it in a side-by-side way. And now what I mean by that is if I had, no, let me start again. If I already had 7zip portable installed at a different version, like a previous version, if I tried to do the install of 7zip portable -- version 22, it would say, well, that package is already installed. Did you actually mean to upgrade it? And if you run the upgrade command, it would replace the earlier version with the version 22. But by installing it with side-by-side option, what you can end up with are two packages installed, one at the earlier version and one at version 22. The problem that came from that, though, is what happens when you upgrade? When you run Choco upgrade 7zip.portable, which one are you actually wanting to upgrade? Is it the earlier version 17, for example, or is it the version 22? It just becomes complicated. And Chocolatey, in this scenario, although we have support for installing packages side by side, it then breaks down when you try to do a Choco upgrade. So what we've done is we've made a decision to no longer support side-by-side installation of packages. So what you'll see is output similar to this at various different times. So you'll see installing the same package with multiple versions is deprecated and will be removed in version 2. So we're actively in the next major version of Chocolatey, the usage or the ability to install side-by-side is going to be removed. So a couple of people in the community have then turned around and said, well, what does that mean? What am I going to do? Because I'm utilizing side-by-side. So the answer to that, and we have got some docs around this now, but if we go up to here and we look at community/packages/Python, the answer is to use specific package IDs for the different SKUs or the different versions that you want to install. So you can see that in action in Python. So if I install the Python package, if I go down and look at the dependencies, then what I actually end up installing is the Python 3 package. So if you're on the major version 3 of Python, installing the Python package gives you Python 3 package. But if I wanted the Python 2 package, then I could absolutely install Python 2, because then I could have, here's Python 3 installed and here's Python 2 installed. And if I then do a Choco upgrade all, then Python 2 package will be updated to the latest version and Python 3 will be updated to the latest version. So the need for side-by-side goes away. But then you might ask, well, because of the way the Python works, you might actually want to install version Python 3.7 and version Python 3.6 because they're actually separate SKUs. So what's actually happening within the community today, or even as we speak, folks are working on creating lower level individual packages. So you will have a Python 3.7 or a 3.7 or a 3-7, whatever the naming convention is settled on. So that will allow you to install the latest version of the 3.7 SKU of Python and the latest version of the Python 3.6 SKU of Python. So the ability to have different applications installed side by side hasn't gone away. All we've done is we removed the ability of Chocolatey to install a single package ID at multiple versions. And the answer to get to work around that is to have separate package IDs for each SKU or each version, whether it's a minor version of the application that you're trying to install. So hopefully that makes sense. It seems to be a hot topic, but the decision has been made because as it stands today, Chocolatey doesn't fully support side-by-side installations, and we want to improve that and make it clear with guidance how you can get to where you want to be without the need for the side-by-side installations in the first place. Whew. That makes sense?
Yeah, the other bit I wanted to highlight with that, Gary, is that side-by-side installs have always been problematic. When as you said, it's a hot topic, and we've got a couple of people who have come forward and said, hey, where does this leave me now that you're deprecating it? Because I do use side-by-side installs, and asking why we're looking to deprecate it. And the reason, the primary reason is because of it's never really worked as we intended it to do. Not because of bad coding, and it's just the way that Chocolatey handles it, the way that the package ecosystem is. It's never really worked the way it should have done, or we intended it to. And it's been problematic for a large number of users. If, for example, you install, let's say that Python package, Gary, that you used, let's say it had 5 dependencies in there, of other things. Maybe there's what's the common one? Some KB packages you need to put in there. Maybe the VC redist is in there for your package as well. They will actually all be installed side by side as well. The dependencies are installed side by side as well. So we've had a user recently who said, look, I've got all these KB packages in the VC redist package, and that's installed in a side by side mode, but I never installed it that way. How did that happen? Well, the package that took those as a dependency was probably installed side by side. So it's causing confusion for people. It's caused problems for people. It's just a problematic option. And as I said, it's never really worked as intended. So we thought, rather than trying to sort of squeeze it and make it work and, do something that really it wasn't intended to do, we've decided to deprecate it and remove it entirely. And we've got an option going forward, as Gary said, for, give the example of the Python package, where you can still get the same functionality you've got today. So we're not saying you can't do the thing you wanted to do. You just need to do it in a slightly different way, but it'll be a more stable, a more supportable, and a more understandable way going forward. But it will take a bit of a mind shift, a little bit to begin with, because you're doing something in a different way that you've done it before. So there are good reasons for doing it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
Okay, so going on to the next one. So this one is really a coding implementation detail, but what we did within the Chocolatey code base is we've changed the source type on source runners to be a generic string rather than an enumeration. That's important because of the architectural changes that we're making in Chocolatey, which will potentially allow us to open up the ability to have additional source runners without the need for it to be part of the choco.exe. So what do I mean by source runners? We kind of hinted at them earlier, but the Python alternative source, that's a source runner. So this change makes it possible to have additional source runners being executed without needing to ship it as part of choco.exe itself. So there'll be more to discuss on that later, but here we're just putting in the kind of building blocks for what we can do to allow expansion of Chocolatey on top of what ships as part of choco.exe itself. This one I think came from Paul himself. He kind of noticed, he's a bit of a PowerShell guru. So what he noticed was that within some of the PowerShell templates, we had a semicolon at the end, and having a semicolon in a PowerShell script is seemingly bad form. So what Paul did is he removed all of those trailing semicolons because they're not needed, and he felt a lot better having done that. I think is what I heard.
This one actually drove me slightly insane for a long time. It always annoyed me when I did a Choco new and that semicolon sat there on its own, that it wasn't needed. So yeah, I'm glad
that's been fixed. You'll be glad to hear.
It's the most important one of them all. You should probably have started with that one, Gary, to be fair.
You'll notice that these improvements, they are ordered in the order of what we feel is important within the development team. So take what you will from this being at the bottom, but it's fine, right?
I have no power.
There was a couple of documentation ones, so I kind of hinted at this earlier. So there was a PR that came in that sorted out all of the spelling mistakes across the Chocolatey code base that the tool was aware of. So that was a PR that came in, and we've done that. And there was a little bit of documentation changes in terms of correctly talking about brand names. So whether it's Mac OS, whether it's Mono, basically just giving the correct capitalization, the correct wording, etc., for all of those things. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and talk about this feature that we've added, which is the allowing for pre and post hooks, or post and pre hooks, to run on upgrade, install, and uninstall. So what is this? I'm going to show an example of it. That's probably the best way to show it in action. So I'm going to go back to let you see my desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see where my machine is at. So I'm going to do a Chocolist local only. And Winderstat is the example package that I'm going to use. So I'm going to do a Choco uninstall Winderstat. But what you'll notice is when I installed Winderstat earlier, it dropped this shortcut onto the desktop because you might want to open Winderstat. So you want it to be on the shortcut and you want to have it on your shortcut on your desktop so you can quickly double click on it. But if I uninstall that, you'll see that the actual application installer for Winderstat doesn't remove the shortcut. That's a failure of the application itself. So if I double click on that, no, that didn't uninstall it. I must not have typed it properly. Hold on. Choco uninstall Winderstat.
It's pinned, Gary. Just the text just above.
That's because I did it earlier. Yes, I wasn't. So that's from the earlier demo that I did. So I will need to do a Choco Pig, Choco Pin.
That's a whole new command here we have discussed.
Seriously, I am not having much luck today on the old typing. So if I do Choco Pin remove, then I'll be able to do an uninstall. So the uninstall, the application uninstaller doesn't actually remove the shortcut. So if I double click on it, seriously. I was expecting that to be.
It looks like the uninstaller also doesn't remove the executable.
Anyway, this is not what I'm trying to show, so I'm going to get rid of that, right? So if I go back to, so what we saw there was that I'm going to try that again. The Choco installer Winderstat ran the application installer, which put a shortcut on the desktop, right? Now, a lot of people don't like shortcuts being added to the desktop as a result of an installation of an application. Now, sometimes an application installer allows you to pass in an option to remove the shortcuts or not install the shortcuts in the first place. That doesn't always happen. It's done in a different way across different installer types, etc. So the end result of it is that literally within Chocolatey, there's not much that we can do in terms of forcing an application installer to not add a desktop shortcut. So the question then becomes is, well, for folks that want to be able to control not putting desktops onto their shortcuts onto their desktop, what do they do? So what we added in Chocolatey is the concept of a hook. So I'm going to show what that means, and I'm going to show how it can be applied. So if I go back up here to Chocolatey, you'll see that I currently don't have anything that mentions hooks here. But if I go back here and I do a Choco install, clean up desktop shortcuts dot hook. Now I'm going to need to install that as a pre-release because it's a pre-release package on the CCR at the minute. Or it's not gone through validation yet, which I was worried that it wasn't going to.
Is there not a dash between desktop and shortcuts, Gary?
Well, that could be it as well. Let's try that too. Thank you, Paul. Clean up. I think you're right. No, so it's still not gone through. It hadn't quite gone through validation before the end of this when I went through demo earlier. But if I install a specific version of the package, it'll grab it. So what this is going to do over on the left here, you'll see that it's now created this hooks folder. So what's a hooks folder, and why do I care? So within that hooks folder, that hook package, that hook package is a new package type in terms of Chocolatey. And what that's done is it's allowed package maintainers, in this case, it's the Cake is a Lie, who's worked on this package on that GitHub repository that Paul mentioned at the start of the stream. So in here, they've added the concept of a post-install all script and a pre-install all script. So the hooks have the concept of being able to be done pre and post install, pre and post uninstall, and pre and post before modify. And then you can either do it on all packages, or you can do it on a specific package ID. So if you wanted to do a hook to do something before you install Firefox, you would do a pre and post install -Firefox, and then it would be limited in scope to just that one package. So why is all this important? Well, what the Cake is a Lie has done within that pre and post scripts is in the pre, well, let's just do this again. So if I do choco install winderstat, what it's going to do in the pre-script is it's going to say, what are the desktop shortcuts that are currently on my machine? And it's going to take a snapshot of them. And then it'll run the application installation. And then in the post hook script, it'll say, what are the shortcuts are now on my desktop? What shortcuts have been added during the operation of installing that application? Oh, winderstat added a shortcut, so I'm going to remove it. Okay. So the scripts themselves, they're open source. They're on that GitHub community repository. So if I go up to here, we'll see that there's a Chocolatey community hooks repository. And the idea is hopefully that this will be a central location where we can establish what are the best practices, what are the guidelines, what should hooks packages do and what they should not do. And we can centralize all of that information into one place. So in here, you can look at what that pre and post scripts are actually doing. So you can drill down into the pre one here. So we'll see that the Cake is a Lie is collecting all of the shortcuts from the user's desktop. And if we're running an admin rights, it's grabbing all the shortcuts from the common desktop, and it's just storing them within a variable. And then in the post script, we'll see they're doing the comparison between what was there before and what there is now, and then deleting the shortcut if it needs to be done. So you will see that information being reported at the command line. But I think in this scenario, because winderstat was all, no, it's there. This line here, removing winderstat.lnk. So winderstat application, put the link file onto my desktop, and then the hook script said, you're not meant to be there, I'm going to delete you. So you do see the output here in the package. There has been discussion about whether we make that information a little bit more visible in the output to say when a hook script is actually being run. But that will be an improvement that comes along as we're going through this. But what I'm trying to show here is that the ability to prevent desktop shortcuts being created as a result of installing a Chocolatey package is something that's been a long sought after bit of functionality within Chocolatey. So what we've done here is rather than bake that into a specific piece of functionality within Chocolatey, what we've said is let's open up the potential for pre and post hook scripts to do the work that needs to be done. Now, what that will entail and what that will mean in terms of what hook scripts folks want to make, we've honestly got no idea. But by centralizing them into this repository, what we're hoping for is that we can gather that knowledge, establish the best practices, and then allow the creation of those hook scripts for the betterment of the entire community. So it's like an exciting feature that's got added in. I'm happy to see it being added in. I'm personally not against an old desktop shortcut being created because I find them quite useful, but I know that this is something that's been a lot of people have wanted. So by installing that hook package, any shortcut that's now being created on any future installation, upgrade, etc., will now be removed from the desktop. Whew. Any comments on that, Paul? Or any questions on that?
Yeah, I was going to just point out why we made it a pre-release package, because we talked about this before. As hook scripts in general are new, and as that hook script package is new, we felt that we should, when you make a package, a pre-release package, it kind of signals things to the consumer of the package. And it says that, this is a beta version, an alpha version, whatever you want to call that, but it signals that this may not work on your machine as intended. This may have unintended consequences. This is something that you need to accept the risk with when you're running. So that's why we've said for this hook script package that this is a pre-release version. We're saying that you should check all of this out. We're saying that Gary's demonstrated here that it, removes those shortcuts from the desktop. But we want people to run this, make sure they're happy with it, and make sure that they take that due diligence before they install it. And as things go forward, and the hook scripts become more widely used, and we've got more people using this hook script package, and we're all comfortable with how it works, and all the other stuff, we will then make it a stable version, a version 1 or whichever version we start with. It might be prior to 1, for example, but we'll make it a stable quote unquote version as well. But I think, as you said, Gary, that while we're just showing up the desktop cleanup script there is the first one, this has the potential to do an awful lot with Chocolatey. And I think one of the things about the desktop cleanup is that some of us felt that that's not really a package manager's responsibility. The package manager's responsibility, such as Chocolatey, is to install packages, and not putting icons on the desktop was really the responsibility of the package itself, or potentially the installer. So we've got the documentation there that Gary's shown as well, and how to create hook scripts, etc. So, and I've also just noticed a spelling mistake in the documentation there, because the word is recommendations and not recommendations, just at the bottom of the screen there, Gary.
Yeah, we should absolutely get that fixed, Paul. Yes.
That's
by
the time this video appears on YouTube, that'll be fixed. So we'll get that fixed just after this. But yeah, I think hook scripts have got huge potential going forward.
I agree.
And your imagination is where do you take it, please? Okay, that was the final demo, I believe, Gary?
That was the last of that was the first thing that was on the list, but I left it to the end so that we could talk about it. But everything else we discussed, yes.
I'm just looking at the chat, just see if there's any questions before we finish. Corey has suggested there one idea might be to move shortcuts from specific user desktops to all user desktop, and kind of suggesting that Nmap and ZenMap might be one of the culprits there. That's potentially an option. You could have a hook script that would look at things that are created on that desktop, bring it into the user's desktop, or on the user desktop, take it into the all users desktop, that kind of thing, and be able to interrogate before and see what's changed afterwards, and move those things about. That's exactly, Cody. That's another potential option for hook scripts. So it's limited by your imagination. Okay.
What I should point out as well that there's no requirement to create a hook package. You can place a file directly within this hooks folder that's created within the Chocolatey installation folder. But the recommendation would be to create a hook package, because at least then you know what version's installed on each machine. So if I do a Chocolist local only here, then I can see that I have that alpha version of that package installed. If you place the files directly into that hooks folder, then there's no real way of knowing which version of that script is installed. So definitely recommend usage of the .hook package rather than directly placing the files on disk.
Stevie's actually brought up a good point, and it was something I was just about to mention. Stevie said you can take a dependency to guarantee the hook for a package is indeed installed. This is something we're actually going to look at prohibiting. It's probably the best word in the Chocolatey community repository, is taking dependencies on hook packages for lots of reasons, which we've not really got time to discuss today. But the other thing is we're also going to look to prohibit hook scripts being dropped from let's say a normal package. Like I'm picking Firefox, okay? So let's say Firefox package, you put hook script in there and it's dropped on the file system in the hooks folder. We're going to look at prohibiting that as well. So a hook package will be for hook scripts. Your normal standard package will be for your standard type of software installs and how it's always been. And we want to really make that distinction there. So yeah, we're going to have a look at all of that. And as it says there at the very bottom, yeah, Gary, thanks for putting out. Do take it says if any hook script because takes dependency in the extension package, that's something slightly different. But above that, it's avoid taking dependencies on regular packages. That's for the hook package itself. So we're going to have a conversation about it, and where we take the hook packages when it comes to package validator, and what we decide to do from that. So watch this space. Okay. Anything else, Gary, before we finish? We're 9 minutes over, but this is a kind of, a fluid conversation, as opposed to, something very strict that we do. Yes, and when we're talking about the things we're talking about package validator and prohibiting, we're talking about the Chocolatey community repository. What you do with your own repository internal to your organization or maybe at home is entirely up to you. We're purely talking about the Chocolatey community repository here. So as we're all out of time, in fact, we're over time, I want to say thank you to you guys for watching today. Please like and subscribe to us on YouTube if you like the video, if you like the content today, and please dislike the video if you didn't like the content. That tells us what you guys all want to see, and follow us on Twitch as well. When you subscribe to us on YouTube and click the bell icon, you'll get a notification when we're actually streaming, and again, if you follow us on Twitch, you'll get that notification as well. So Gary, anything to say before we go? A big thank you to you for coming along and doing all the work today, but if you get anything to say before we finish?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I think this was a very interesting release for lots of reasons, but it's great to see some of this functionality finally landing in folks' hands. So definitely have a play with it. Let us know if there's any problems with it. But yeah, excited to have folks use it and see what they think of it.
Cool. And yeah, as you said, we're interested to see what people say about it. If you have any comments, any suggestions, anything to do with anything we've looked at today, but particularly hook scripts, please let us know. A lot of the functionality and is driven by our users in our community and our customers as well, to tell us what you want to see. So the more you tell us, the more we know and the more we can change. Our next live stream is actually on the 17th. Is it the 17th of November? It's 2 weeks today. Yes, it is, because 3 + 14 is 17, Paul. So that's the 17th of November, and that will be at 5 p.m. UTC, so a different time. Now all the time zones have changed around. It'll be at 5 p.m. UTC, and that's our Chocolatey Community Coffee Break, where we'll be talking to David Gardner. We'll be doing a live stream at 10 a.m. UTC as well, and 5 p.m. UTC. The reason being, David is in Australia, and their time zones are all very different from what we are used to here in the UK. So we're going to be streaming it twice there. So please join us for that and ask David any questions. David is a long-time community member and moderator of the Chocolatey Community Repository. And between now and then, as Stevie has suggested, and I think it's probably a good idea, is Gary's away to get a typing class. So hopefully by the 17th, he will learn how to type pin and not pig. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gary, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye-bye.